Greater Boston Today, hosted by George Knight. Public service programming on Beasley Media Group stations.
With COVID-19, we all have had to rethink how we do things, and that certainly applies to charity events that in other times would very much include large gatherings. Organizations have had to adapt, and such is the case for Care Dimensions, who for 33 years has been holding the Walk for Hospice. We're going to learn about what Care Dimensions does and about how this year's walk will be a little different by speaking with Joanne McGinnis. Joanne has been a registered nurse for nearly 40 years and is president of Aberdeen Home Care, works very closely with Care Dimensions as well, and is a co-chair for the event. Joanne, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here with you.
Well, we're going to talk about the walk itself, which obviously will be, as I mentioned, slightly different this year. But I wanted to start by asking how you and your colleagues have had to adjust what you do because of coronavirus. I'm guessing there's probably a long list of things done differently.
I would say everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
That
pretty much covers it. Right.
Yeah. Aberdeen provides in-home care wherever the patient calls home, whether that's with a relative, in a nursing home, in assisted living, or in their very own home, when they get to the point that they need it, either because of age or illness, or even can be young people, people unfortunately suffering with life-limiting illness like, a cancer or organ failure or something like that. So we have had to turn our operations inside out and upside down to meet what's going on in the community, particularly before we knew really who had it and before all the testing was available. It was an invisible enemy, and you just have to be prepared for everything. But we have actually, I'm proud to say, really led the industry in our preparedness, not only with personal protective equipment, but with education. And Aberdeen has been out speaking statewide on all kinds of forums, educating people about how to cope with it in the real world, like personal protective equipment, but also how these caregivers are going into what could be a dangerous position for themselves.
Yeah.
They're putting their own health, right? Their own health and the health of their families at risk by going in to do their job.
Well, it's absolutely a double whammy for you guys, because people who aren't in the health field have had to adjust and turn things upside down, and yet you factor in, like you said, going into places where people could have it, or boy, it's staggering. The adjustments you must need to make, and
it's exhausting. I think that's the other thing to think about. Today is actually it's actually Home Aid Recognition Day by the state of Massachusetts, the Home Care Alliance, which is the largest group organization in the state. And today's the day they're doing an online campaign because they're not able to have their regular. They have a huge event at a large country club just south of Boston in Quincy. I can't think of the name of it. But they have a huge event there with hundreds of people every year, and they acknowledge really the stars. And they're having to do that online today, which leads us into, how the Walk for Hospice is going to change come the fall.
Exactly. We're going to be talking about that soon because obviously you guys have had to adjust as well. Joanne McGinnis chairs the Care Dimensions Walk for Hospice. It will be a virtual celebration, as we're going to talk about, happening September 27th. So I want to ask you, just before we get into the walk and stuff like that, what has there been an upside to having to adjust to COVID? Have you learned things that are going to help you down the road? I mean, or is it just a pain and you just want it to be over with?
Well, that's a great question. It's sort of both sides of the coin. Yeah. This is an extreme situation. I mean, it's in pandemic in the way we've never seen before. Even they keep referring to the influenza of 1917. The Spanish flu. This so overshadows that in terms of the numbers and the impact and the death, that it's something really we've in the healthcare community never ever had to face before. But it has, I think, to everyone, put infection control on a front burner instead of a back burner, because we are now more acquainted with the fact that all kinds of things are spreading, especially in living situations where there is shared living, whether that's, soldiers' homes, Veterans Affairs buildings, nursing homes, right?
Yeah, it's amazing how much is being affected by this. We're speaking with Joanne McGinnis, who chairs the Care Dimensions Walk for Hospice, which is coming up. She also is president of Aberdeen Home Care. We were talking about, and as if you weren't busy enough, I know you volunteer at Care Dimensions as well. Can you let us know a little bit about what goes on at Care Dimensions, the things offered, and what they do, please?
Absolutely. I'm proud to say I'm a former staff member of Care Dimensions. In the 90s, I was the clinical manager, which was really, I was responsible for all of the nursing and the nurses' aid work. And it's gone from a small organization called Hospice of the North Shore, which was Hospice of the North Shore, and it's merged with Hospice of Greater Boston. It's now the largest hospice in the state of Massachusetts. And hospice, when I was in it, was still sort of I don't know, out there on the left. It wasn't really voodoo, but it wasn't really what it is today.
Yeah.
And now today it's a mainstream, totally supported by Medicare, Medicaid, and all insurances have a hospice care benefit. And it's part of traditional medicine now. And it really is, the whole notion of hospice is when you have a life-limiting illness and your focus is no longer curative for a variety of reasons, maybe because you've chosen it not to be or that your treatment options have ended. This is the time to come into palliative care and hospice where you focus on quality of life, not quantity of life. Exquisite management of symptoms, whether those are physical, emotional, spiritual, whatever they are that you're facing at end of life. This is the time you're calling in the experts, and that's what hospice has to offer.
And I think you're right. It's one of those, and even the terms themselves, hospice and palliative care for that matter, I think, people know what that is now, and they're realizing that it is a big part of health care.
Yeah, it's true. Many people still hear the word hospice, and they say, oh, I'm not ready for that. And, of course, they die in 2 days.
Because it previously was thought of as, that's where, the 97-year-old goes.
Yes, right. That means you're death imminent, which means, you're 2 breaths away from death. Not at all. I mean, preparing for death is one of the biggest things that we'll do in life. Making sure that we have all those conversations we need to have, that our affairs are in order in the financial world. But to me, even more important, that our affairs are in order in the relationship world. Because you can't do a redo. There's no redo when you're at end of life.
That's right.
And how that is shepherded. And I think of that as, care dimensions and all hospices don't come in like the Green Berets and take over and tell you how it's going to be done. They give you options about how this can look for you and your family, which is why I'm no longer an employee there, but as you know, I was. But Aberdeen has really linked arms with Care Dimensions to provide a lion's share of the private duty care that their patients need in the community, and why I am a co-chair of the Walk for Hospice.
Joanne McGinnis, co-chair of the Care Dimensions Walk for Hospice, the virtual celebration happening September 27th. Let's talk about the Walk for Hospice itself, since we kind of got started on that tangent. Can you talk a little bit about how you got involved and what makes it such a special event, what goes on?
I think I've been doing the Walk for Hospice for 22 or 23 years, ever since I was there in the 90s, and that's one Sunday, once a year. But, of course, I've had a lot of deaths in my life that I want to recognize personally, and so it's a meaningful event for me. It's not just a fundraiser.
Yep.
Anytime that you pull people together who have had a death close up and personal, it's going to be what we call in the industry a bereavement event. It's a time where you're acutely aware of why you're there. Maybe you're there because you haven't had a loss and you just think this is a great community organization and you want to support it. But I have found 9/10 of the time that people are drawn there for an exceptionally personal reason, and it becomes a monumentous event for them as they go back, obviously, in their memories, and they sort of revisit the loss of the person they're there to honor, and also to collectively have an experience with all these other people that are in the same place you are. They most likely have lost someone close, and here they are in a way to celebrate that and to recognize the organization that was so critically important for them to realize their goals at end of life. So it's not just a fundraiser at all, a deeply meaningful event that takes a lot into account other than just dollars.
And as you just said, it's way more than just raising money, but that is a part of it. And can you talk about where the money raised by walkers and sponsors, what that's used for?
Absolutely. As I mentioned before, hospice is a Medicare benefit, which means Medicare kind of drives all reimbursement. So whatever Medicare does, other insurers will follow suit on. So there is a hospice runs on what's called a per diem benefit. They get a little bit of money every day that a person is on hospice care. And that pays for your medications, your durable medical equipment, your nursing care, your home health aid care, social work care, chaplain care. So that's an awful lot of services for one daily per diem rate. All the things that Care Dimension does outside of those clinical services are things like their camp stepping stones. And that's been a camp that they've had probably for 20 years that helps and supports children who have lost someone close to them. And it's a full-on day retreat where kids go to sometimes it's a college campus, and they have all kinds of programs to honor the one they've lost and workshops really geared at kids. They also have a volunteer program. And now these volunteers obviously aren't paid, but that needs a lot of administration, to run that volunteer. The bereavement groups. I'll tell you personally, I was a benefit of a bereavement group. My mother died 4 years ago, and it hit me like a telephone pole.
Yeah.
And I, after having led those groups many years ago, there I was, a recipient sitting around the table, and it couldn't have been more helpful for me. So bereavement groups that are specialized in loss of parents, say, or loss of sibling, loss of spouse, and loss of child. So these are part of the things that that Care Dimensions receives no compensation for, but these are programs that are vital to the community to help them cope with the grief.
We're speaking with Joanne McGinnis, co-chair of the Care Dimensions Walk for Hospice, the virtual celebration coming up on September 27th. Let's give people ways they can sign up to walk, find out more, maybe make a donation if they'd like. Is online best way or the only way as can be?
Yeah, we are actually asking people to get online now and register, and that is at caredimensions.org/walk. And you can set up a team. You can donate individually. There's also a Facebook page, Care Dimensions on Facebook. So there's many ways to access Care Dimensions. If you're stuck and you're not really a computer-savvy individual, you can always call their number, and that's 978-774-7566. And you can also caredimensions.org/walk or check them out on Facebook. So we love to make this fun. This is a serious, somber event, but it's also a lot of fun.
Right.
So teams in the past, not virtual, have shown up with team T-shirts or sombreros or hats or funny noses or any one of a variety of things to promote team spirit, because especially families, if you've got 10 people from your family there and you're walking for Nana Smith and you've got your Nana Smith shirt on, you're hooping and hollering and you've got noisemakers and you're probably blowing, those little party things. Team Aberdeen, we were the first team to register online, and because we're such a proud sponsor of Care Dimensions, and we're really making an all-out effort this year because it's virtual to really step up our engagement, our dollars, and I want to say the flavor of the day, really trying to bring that to our staff and our team way out in front.
We're speaking with Joanne McGinnis, co-chair of the Care Dimensions Walk for Hospice. I'll give the contact information again. You can find them online at caredimensions.org/walk. You can also reach them through social media, or if you want to just give them a call, that you can do as well. The phone number is 978-774-7566. The Care Dimensions Walk for Hospice is coming up on September 27th, a virtual celebration. Joanne McGinnis has been a registered nurse for nearly 40 years. Thank you for your service.
I was on Noah's Ark. I was a nurse on Noah's Ark. I'm also a veterinary assistant because of my experience on Noah's Ark.
Oh, wow. Good for you. That's awesome.
A well-rounded individual.
Absolutely. And president of Aberdeen Home Care. We have to put that in as well. Thank you so much for what you do, Joanne. And thank you so much for coming on, letting us learn more about this. And it's been just a pleasure talking with you. I appreciate your time.
Likewise. Absolute pleasure.